Bringing you the news from around the globe and here in Sri Lanka. This is the news at 9. A very good evening to all our viewers. I'm Joel Outscore.
Good evening, I'm Aishwarya Pinto. Let's start off with a look at the headlines.
President to push for capital punishment.
පාර්ලිමේන්තුවෙන් එකඟත්වයක් ඇති වුණොත් මම බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා ලබන වසරේ සිට මරණ දණ්ඩනය ක්‍රියාත්මක කිරීම සම්බන්ධයෙන්.
පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ සිටින සමස්ත 225 ඉන්න മന്ത്രി කණ්ඩායමගේ බහුතර සහයෝගයක් ලැබේ කියලා.
Tensions in Ganemulla over the molestation of another minor. Individual who pushed his wife and child into the sea in Koskoda arrested. Former Additional Secretary of the Ministry of Defence accepts that firearms to Lanka were provided in violation of usual legal practice.
President Maithripala Sirisena today announced that he is prepared to impose the death penalty after conducting discussions with Parliament.
Speaking at the second phase of the National Drugs Prevention Programme at the Galle Urban Council, President Maithripala Sirisena said that new regulations are required to curb crimes such as rape, child abuse, burglary and murder.
In the past week, a 4.5-year-old child was molested in Uhumia, Kurunegala and subsequently murdered. Following this incident, views were expressed over introducing the capital punishment. Even at the funeral of that child, the people were asking me to introduce capital punishment. When you speak of imposing capital punishment, international human rights organizations raise their objections. However, capital punishment is still in use in powerful nations such as China and the US. Therefore, I have no doubt of introducing capital punishment.
අකමැත්තක් නැහැ. නමුත් මට ඒ සඳහා
However, even if I have powers, when the Supreme Court decides that one is guilty and imposes capital punishment, the order will be executed only after the President signs the order. However, I hope to discuss with Parliament that this process will not be required. A proposal from Parliament will not be required. However, I hope to seek the consent of Parliament over capital punishment. The death penalty would be introduced from next year with the approval of Parliament.
The President also noted that measures will be taken to cancel all liquor licenses that have been issued without following proper procedure and added that the government hopes to remove the revenue generated from the sale of liquor when preparing the budgets for the coming years.
On to stories that made it to the headlines. 3 persons have been arrested over molesting a minor.
The fatherless minor is taken care of by her relatives when the mother heads off for employment. Police say that the minor may have been molested during that time. With the incident coming to light, locals from Ganemulla obstructed the main road this evening and demonstrated.
Don't send these men to our village. If they do come, there will be consequences. A necessary punishment should be given. Don't send them to our village. We ask the President to impose the death penalty. Death penalty must be imposed. If the police set them free, we women will assault them.
The wave of crimes against minors which came to the fore with the rape and murder of Vidya in Jaffna and the rape and murder of a 3-year-old girl in Kilinochchi intensified with the murder of Seya Sadevmi in Kotadeniyawa. Chandrani Bandara, the Minister of Women's Affairs, speaking at an event in Anuradhapura, said that she would contribute to the dialogue in society over calling for the capital punishment to curb such heinous crimes.
We believe that the President too will be closely looking at this situation. He had mentioned that if Parliament approves, he will impose the capital punishment. If this is presented to Parliament, I believe the majority in Parliament would support it. No one wishes to see such crimes taking place again. An incident where an individual attempted to kill his wife and child by pushing them to the sea was reported today from Koskoda, Galle.
The individual, who is a resident from Benthoda, had arrived at the Koskoda beach at around 9:30 last night, along with his wife and child. Police revealed that the suspect in question had pushed his wife and the child to the sea. Even though his wife was rescued, the infant is still missing. Search operations are still underway with the assistance of the Navy and area residents to locate the infant. The wife in question, who survived the incident, had gone back to the house in a three-wheeler subsequent to the incident, at which point her husband, who saw her, had fled the area. The wife was admitted to the hospital for treatment after lodging a complaint with the police. The suspect who fled the scene was captured by a group in Kaikavale in the Rua and was later handed over to the police. There is no point if crimes like this are committed in a country that safeguards Buddhism. These sins can be prevented if death penalty is imposed.
On to a developing story this evening. United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has welcomed the report of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights on promoting reconciliation, accountability and human rights in Sri Lanka.
The UN Secretary General says he hopes that its important recommendations will help support the efforts of the people and the government of Sri Lanka to carve a durable path towards long-lasting peace and stability and respect for human rights through a genuine and credible process of accountability and reconciliation that meets international standards. The statement says that the Secretary General is also encouraged by the response of and commitment expressed by the government of Sri Lanka and the opposition to consult widely with all stakeholders and take meaningful action to address these issues. It further goes on to state that he recognizes the courageous strides being made by the country and he urges the government to continue building on this positive momentum and the international community to support Sri Lanka in this regard. In the process, the Secretary General states that he hopes that Sri Lanka's efforts will ensure that it will fully secure a peaceful, prosperous future among the family of nations.
Minister Patli Champika Ranawaka expressed his views on the recently published by the OCHRC on Sri Lanka.
The investigation report on Sri Lanka by the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights does not speak of the real situation that existed during the war. With the release of the report and views that were expressed during the release of the report, the unfriendly approaches towards the country were disclosed. The tale that was spread all over citing that Tamil people of the country were murdered in mass numbers was proven wrong. In addition, the tale that was spread that 42 persons of the security forces and their commanding officers would be mentioned with regard to that was also proven wrong. They even attempted to impose sanctions on us. That doubt was also cast away. The doubts of attempts to arrest the war heroes and political leaders by foreign nations was also cast away. However, this is a biased report. It is clear that it was compiled in favor of the crimes that were committed by the terrorists. Although there are recommendations, the country is not bound to do them. Whether we like it or not, only if a proposal is passed by the UN General Assembly or the UN Security Council that we will have to implement and act on it. Welcome back to the news. Still in local news this evening, the Colombo International Book Fair 2015 opened today. The event was held under the auspices of Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe.
The Colombo International Book Fair was organized for the 17th time this time around. Publishers from here at home and abroad, as well as importers, are supporting this Colombo International Book Fair.
In the past, we have good books published. They were penned by authors such as Martin Wickremesinghe. But today, we cannot see anyone like Martin Wickremesinghe. If a person like that comes, the Minister of Education wouldn't let them rise. The reason is because more attention is on printing school textbooks. That group has a separate story. I asked the Minister what we are going to do for the National Library Services Board. He said that there are no funds. I was not surprised. If I was the Minister of Finance, I too will cut back on the funds. Money was mainly spent on the administrative needs or to provide employment rather than the printing of books. There are shortcomings in the school textbooks as well. Why do we speak of this? It is we who commence the process to provide free textbooks. So good books need to be given. children. However, the Ministry of Education is a fraud. We need to focus on bringing together the publishers and printers into a frame of providing free books. Now some might come and say that they will give the books to the businessmen. We had people who penned books praising the qualities of the king. One who yells, commenced a fast for the king. If good books are provided, we are prepared to spend even more for that. For the next 5 years, school children will be given the best books. We are prepared to provide the 6% provided for education in a proper manner.
The Colombo International Book Fair will conclude on the 27th.
A former additional secretary to the Ministry of Defence, Damayanti Jayarathne, had accepted that firearms to the Lanka company was provided in violation of the usual legal practice. She made this submission before the Presidential Commission of Inquiry to look into large-scale corruption and fraud.
Witness accounts had proven that the Rakna Arakshaka Lanka was issued with 3,473 firearms, from which only 89 has been issued under the normal legal procedure. Lasil De Silva, the Secretary to the Presidential Commission of Inquiry to investigate and inquire into serious acts of fraud and corruption, said that she was questioned yesterday.
Damayanti Jayarathne accepted before the Commission that when weapons were provided to Lanka, they did not follow the proper legal practice. 3,473 weapons had been provided to Lanka and only 89 of them have licenses. It was noted that the other 3,384 weapons were provided in violation of the legal practice. Karunasena Hettiarachchi, the Secretary of the Ministry of Defence, also said that such acts have been done under the approval of the President, which is the accepted procedure. But it appears that the procedure was not followed. The gathering of evidence continues.
Former Secretary of Defence Gotabaya Rajapaksa was summoned before the Presidential Commission of Inquiry today once again.
On Monday, I went to the FCID. I was here yesterday and again today. In addition, we have to find lawyers for this. I have to work more now than I worked as the Secretary of Defence during the war. Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs Dr. Harsha De Silva, speaking at an event in Nugegoda, assured that all development projects that were halted will recommence.
The event was held to commemorate the commencement of the second phase of the Katuwela in Ambuldeniya, Nugegoda.
We attempted to recommence the projects for a couple of months now, but since the previous government failed to allocate the funds, it was postponed. Even though the projects was assigned to the contractors, they were not provided with the sufficient funds. Certain people raised questions and criticized our 6-month government after the development work was halted. They asked if the UMP government can't even carry out a development project. The main issue in this regard was that the funds were not allocated for the purpose. Hence, without these funds, we could not proceed with the projects. All projects that were temporarily halted will now recommence.
Newsfirst commenced a new CSR project aimed at assisting the people who have been battered by the human-elephant conflict, an issue that has seen no solution as yet.
Wild elephants are drawn towards populous areas as its habitat is destroyed as a result of deforestation. This has led to the wild pachyderms causing damages to property and at times claim the lives of the people. Over 100 persons have been killed so far this year alone as a result of the human-elephant conflict. The northwestern province is an area that has been severely battered by this issue. Today, Newsfirst took this initiative to build dialogue at the Kankaniyagama Sri Sambodhi Viharya in Kalgamur in order to prevent the loss of life caused when people panic at time when elephants charge into the villages, and also obtain the immediate assistance of the wildlife officers. Minister of Wildlife Kamini Jai Vikrama Pereira was also present for the event. Steps that need to be followed to prevent falling victim to wild elephants' rage and also to safely chase away the wild elephants back to the wild was broadly discussed at this event. Under this program, one village head will be chosen to coordinate with the wild officials at the time of an emergency. Thereby, 3 representatives were selected from the 5 villages that took part in this discussion. This program will also be practically tested in the near future. Newsfirst also hopes to implement this program at the other provinces that have been battered by the human-elephant conflict for the betterment of its people.
I will render my complete support to take this initiative undertaken by Sirasa to the entire country. The construction of fences, the maintenance of them and the planting of trees need to be looked into with the people. I need to be thankful to the Sirasa Media Network for bringing the people together for this task, one that we could not do. We appreciate the support provided to minimize the human-elephant conflict. This program took place in a successful manner and people were made aware of the precautions that need to be taken.
On a lighter note, a Pirit chanting ceremony took place this evening at the Stein Studios in Ratmalana to invoke blessings on the Capital Maharaja Organisation Limited, the Stein Studios and the staff. Members of the Mahasangha, including the chief incumbent of the Kalaniya Rajamahaviharaya, Venerable Professor Kolupitiya Mahinda Sangharakkhitathero, and chief incumbent of the Yatihalagala Rajamahaviharaya, Venerable Wathurukumbure Dhammaratnathero, were present. The Sarvandata relics, which were placed at a special enclosure at the Sirasa Prasak zone, were also brought to the premises for the event.
The Marine Environmental Protection Agency says that human activity have caused harm to the beaches of Sri Lanka.
The main reason for such destruction is the construction of illegal establishments, incorrect disposal of garbage, prawn farming and the destruction of coral reefs. According to the Coastal Protection Act, the area demarcated as the coastal strip is 300 meters from mid-tide inwards toward land and 2 kilometers into the ocean from the central tides. Rivers and lagoons are inclusive of this. Ranjit Meghaswat, chairman of the Marine Environmental Protection Agency, said that the balance in the environment is fading away as a result of the destruction caused to the beaches and coastal line. A national program will commence tomorrow morning under the leadership of President Maithripala Sirisena. The opening ceremony would take place at the Golf Face Green tomorrow, while the coastal line of the Western Province will be cleaned in line with this event.
In business news this evening, farmers in the Dambul area say that a situation has arisen where fair prices cannot be obtained for the sale of local big onions. Farmers point out that this situation has arisen as a result of imported big onions flooding the markets. Big onions harvested during the Yala season in Dambula and a number of surrounding areas are currently being transported to the markets. Farmers point out that on average, the cost to produce a kilogram of big onions ranges between 60 and 65 rupees. However, farmers complain that today a kilogram of local big onions is being sold at a price between 30 and 55 rupees. Farmers are facing this problem as a result of imported big onions flooding the market.
We bought onions at the market to be sold, but now I think it is better if I did not bring any onions. This is because there is no proper price for my produce. I have no way of paying my bank loans. There was an average price last time. This time there is nothing of that sort. The maximum price here is between 45 to 50 rupees. However, farmers bring their produce and wait for 2 to 3 days and still do not sell their stocks. The reason for this is because onions brought from Pakistan too are sold for between 40 and 45 rupees.
When such a situation existed in the past, the action taken by previous governments were to increase the import tax on onions by a large margin. However, as of present, the import tax imposed by the government on a kilogram of big onions stands at only 10 rupees.
The only option for us is to consume poison. If this current situation is not rectified immediately, we will all be rendered helpless. Last year the import tax was 30 rupees, but this year the tax was only 10 rupees. That is why we request the officials, if possible, to increase the import tax to 30 rupees. In the same manner, the government had gotten involved and found a solution for the storage problem for the paddy farmers. If the government helps the onion farmers, we will not see a drop in the price of big onions.
There is a perception in Delhi that this is a government that is very conscious, unfriendly to or undermining the interests of India.
Is Sri Lanka getting closer to its enemies?
Exclusive interview with Sashi Tharoor, Congress Party MP and former veteran diplomat.
Before wrapping up the news, is reminding you that you could log on to our website www.newsfirst.lk. With that, we leave you tonight. For the News team, I'm Joel Outscoon.
I'm Aishwarya Pinto. Have yourself a very good weekend. Good night.
Good night.